Welcome to the Will Luckett Podcast. This Seattle-based show is a space for authentic storytelling, deep conversations, and unexpected discoveries, exploring faith, life, and the human journey. Whether reflecting on personal experiences or unpacking cultural moments, this podcast invites listeners into meaningful and thought-provoking dialogue, connecting deeply with the diverse voices and perspectives right here in Seattle, Washington. Today, we're diving into a powerful discussion, a conversation on faith and works, but this time, we're taking it even deeper. And I couldn't think of a better person to explore this with than my special guest, Sean Armour. If you've been rocking with us for a little while, you might remember Sean from a past episode, and trust me, he's got a whole lot more wisdom to share with us. Beyond faith and work, we're also unpacking the journey, how we find purpose, navigate setbacks, and stay grounded in a world full of distractions. Plus, we'll get into relationship management, real manhood, and what it truly means to walk out our beliefs every single day. It's going to be a rich conversation. So, the one and only Sean Armour, what's up, bro?
Hey, man, how you doing? I'm here. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, we're coming to him live from South Seattle, Columbia City. And we're going to hop right into it. So, Sean Armour, right, we're talking about words a little bit today.
Okay.
And one thing we don't get to choose in life is our name. But our names are so powerful. So, growing up as a Sean, is there any particular memory or set of feelings that you think about when you realize what your name is and what it means?
Yeah, that's a great question. I asked my mom, how did she come about the name? My mom's a very spiritual person as well too. So I love to think that it had something to do with the actual meaning. For the name Sean is God is gracious, and so I've been trying to live that out, right, and just build my brand from there, right. As a youth, I stand on my values, right? But more importantly, I really like to live it out, right? Live by example. And so I feel like I've had, all my life just been placed in a position where youth look up to me. And so to see me means that I'm really trying to live that out and be gracious to you, be gracious to other people, and that's just in the Bible. So that's just kind of me as well too.
Yeah, names have so much meaning. It's interesting. You walk through life, and we're all unique, we're all different, but that one thing we have in common, because there's only so many names, especially here in the U.S. And specific names definitely garner different, personality types and traits.
Sure.
And so
there's power in the name.
Yeah.
Power in that. That's why I don't let people mispronounce it or, abuse it. I spell it S-H-A-W-N, right? And my last name Armour, right? And some people are Armor. Like, no, it's Armour. It's A-R-M-O-U-R. I like to think it's from my, background, Creole descent, bringing up, right, where we came from, how we got to be who we are. And that's really what's in the name. It really kind of tells your background, your story, where you came from, your people from the South, or from the East Coast, from the West Coast. It kind of all plays into it, but you have to adopt it, you have to live it, you have to really take ownership of it and live out your brand in that name.
So take us back to college, man.
Okay.
Your faith experience. What was your faith experience as a younger person? When did you really start to blossom and bring forth fruit and thoughts and feelings that were tailored towards God, God's love, and knowing that He has a plan and a purpose for your life?
Okay. Well, I grew up Methodist, and so, but I went to Lutheran schools in St. Louis, right? Lutheran North High School was my high school, and it's interesting to just be around different religions, understanding that I came into the understanding that it's really just a order of worship, right? We all love God, and as a youth, I was just dragged me to church. Mama would bring me there. No matter what you was doing in high school on Saturday nights, you had to make sure you was at church on Sunday. And so I think a lot of us have lived that life. And I think through, that osmosis, it gets in there. It gets into you, right? You hearing these words, you seeing these things play out. Certain things play out in your life, right? Whether you're doing sports or achievement in school, right? You kind of see certain things play out where you kind of understand that wasn't me. That was something else that happened. You know what I'm saying? And so in college, I kind of graduated. I see it as, you be a baby Christian. You start off with the a little something, the teenage Christian, where you feel like the teenagers, you feel like they know it all, they got it all under wraps, and then you come to a young adult Christian, right? And then that adult Christian. And those phases are all based on your life and how much the closeness that your relationship that you have with God. And so being brought to church in Methodist, and the Lutheran background and understanding that, and friends being Catholic and things of that nature, I really understood it was just an order of worship, but we all love God. But in college, I got to really use it because I got to lean on Him more myself. Mama wasn't there, Pops wasn't there. It was just me, you know what I'm saying, going through these life experiences down there in Grambling, Louisiana at Grambling State University. So I had to really just build that relationship myself, and that's where I think I just kind of matured into that adolescence, that young adult, from that adolescence to that young adult, where I was brought to church as a baby, grew up in it, didn't really know as a teenager, and then I became a young adult, really trying to understand and use it, the power of that relationship with God in my life. And so it played out a lot in my grades, sports, difficult situations and relationships. You know what I mean? Really trying to find those understandings, losing friends to the world, right? Through different exercises and experiences, right? And so just really trying to come into that and understand it as yourself. So that's why I kind of grew into that young adult believer.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing here is self-discovery, right? Not only in popular narratives, but I think there's truth to this, that college is a time for self-discovery. It's a time for exploration and growth. And college is a point in your life where you have so much freedom. It's probably the most freedom you've ever had as a young adult. And just reflecting on my personal experience, college was the first time where I really started to pray every single day. That's when I really started to grow and blossom and search different things out. I think my personal library grew from almost no books to over 30 different titles from faith-based authors and things like that. So it was a time for me where I just really grew and started to experience God in ways that I hadn't before, at least not consciously.
Yeah. I think I really wanted to really get into the Word and understand it for myself as well too. So I started to get into the Scripture more. I really try to digest it and know the Scripture and think about what it meant for my life.
And to me, that sounds like maybe a shift in perspective, right? One thing I reflect on is one thing that I've always had is my character, right? I think there's a difference between your character changing and your perspective. Two building blocks of my character are respect and kindness, right? But through the years, my perspective shifted because I got to experience life, be around people that were different from me, things like that. So in a lot of ways, I started to really have faith, right? And that's going to lead us into our next segment. It is time for the 3 essentials. This segment is designed to break the ice, ground the guest story, and set the tone for the episode. Every guest answers the same 3 essential questions, offering listeners a window into their journey, values, and personal faith experience. So this first question, we already touched on it a little bit, but take us back to the beginning of your faith journey. How did it start? What have you learned about God, life, and yourself along the way?
Okay. Yeah, I touched on it a little bit. Born into the Methodist church. Lane Tabernacle down there in St. Louis, and just going to church on Sundays. I had the most fun in Sunday school because those were my friends, right? I used to look forward to going to Sunday school and seeing my friends and playing and getting into stuff, right, and experiences. And so that was kind of the beginning of the journey, but also having the love for wanting to be there, right? And so as I grew up, I again, so glad that I had that relationship with God, that mama made me go to church and understand that, right, to get baptized, right, and understand that, to really know that when I needed it, I could call on it, right? And that's a lot of what we do in the Black community as well, too, you know what I mean? Because we want to be able to call on that when you need it, right? And so the church has been a pillar in the community for years, but it also is our first understanding of what community really is. Right, coming together, seeing family, seeing friends, right? Children that's in the choir with you, building those relationships, and so along the way, that's just kind of helped me be who I am in life, working to build those relationships, right? Not being afraid to talk to people, right? And I like you said, and like I said before, in college, I really got to understand that it was my relationship with him and not the relationship that mama had, right? Because mama wasn't there. It's my relationship, and to really take a hold of that, right? To really try to understand that, to really guide myself into a place where I had a better understanding of God and our relationship, right? So, like you said, a lot of reading went into play, Bible studies, mentoring with older men, right? Understanding their journey, seeing their journeys, talking about it, trying to plot it out for myself. And so it just, like I said, brought me full circle to really want to understand Scripture, have that in my life, to be able to call on it, right? To be able to use it, that power that I have and the power of the relationship of God and manifestation into my life, right? Those power words into my life, right? Speaking into my life, speaking over my own life, right? Where you had your family and grandmama and them praying for you. At some point, you got to get it for yourself. And so that's just my maturation to where I am today. And I guess, he kind of, everybody always say, like, you should be a pastor. You should have been a pastor, right? And to some degree, I think I am, because I work a lot with youth. And that's my ministry, right? Standing in the gap for the youth, passing down that word, being that real example, that representation. And so that's where I am right now.
And I think something that's super interesting that we've kind of articulated a little bit is that question, that first part of that question. What have you learned about God? So in my mind, I go to, what is the knowledge of God? So outside of the Bible, what can life itself teach us about God? Mm-hmm. We may not be aware of the narratives within the Word, although they could be synonymous and teach us about our life experiences. So I'm thinking, how can we relate our life experiences to what the Word says, and then in turn have that grow our reliance on God or grow our perspective on God's hand in our life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see it like it's the old adage is that it's living and breathing. That word is living and breathing, and it'll play out in your life. You'll see certain things, and that's what drew me closer to God as well too. Because I'm like, if it's not some imaginary figure, and these things happened a long time ago, how are they relating to my life right now? How does that work? Because it's living and breathing. And the more you get into it, the more you understand it, and the more you can use it. You'll see it playing out in your life.
Absolutely. In that stream of curiosity for me, I've always wanted to hear it right from God, right? But what God left us is God's word. So that's where the learning happens, mm-hmm. by studying that word. But I've always been like, man, if I could pick God's brain, if I could ask God one question, and that leads us into our next essential question. If you could ask God one question, what would it be? And I'll go first. Okay. So here it is, man. I have a silly, funny answer, and I have a serious one. So my silly answer is, how many hairs are on my head? right? Because God knows the amount of hair. He knows every follicle on your head. So I think that's kind of funny. But my serious answer would be, what is your will for my life? You know, I think that would answer a lot of my inquisition, but it would also kind of give it away, right? If there wasn't any chase, if there wasn't any journey, if there wasn't a period of seeking and wanting to know that, it may make me not as hungry to study, not as hungry to figure it out. If I knew the answer to that question. I also think that part of that has already been answered through the example of Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. God's will for my life is to help others, spread kindness, spread good faith, things like that, bring others to Christ. But I also would like to know, my purpose. Like, what is it, God? Well, what did you put me here to do? Right? So I think getting that question answered at the feet of God, I think would be very insightful.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You talked about that purpose, and I like to see it as it's playing out in our lives. You know what I'm saying? And the question I would probably ask is, what's my job? What's my job in heaven? And did I get it right here? You know what I'm saying? Because I think that there's a correlation to both things, right? I see myself in God's house. There are many mansions, right? I see myself as being a king, right, here on earth as well too. But I also see myself being a king as well too in heaven. So I think that there are, responsibilities that we have towards our fellow man, to be kind towards. And I often ask myself, what kind of king would I be in heaven? You know what I'm saying? To really just, would I be good to my people, right? Would I be pleasing to God, right? Just like they even had to go through it, right? And several other people had to figure that out, right? We've got several examples in the Bible. So I know that is a real thing, that kingship that we carry, and how I believe that it translates into heaven too, right? Like, I often sometimes see myself, as I've stated before, standing in the gap for the youth. As there was a show, it's a Disney movie, Pixar movie, right? And it's called, I think it's Soul, right? And that movie was so dope to me because it gave you that picture of your life in heaven and your life on earth, right? And there are jobs and roles and stuff that you have to go through. And this guy is, so if you don't know the movie, I'll give you my piece out I'm talking about right now, is that he was walking around in heaven with a guide, right? Like a tour. They was showing him heaven and what was going on. And he was just, his main thing was he was trying to get back to earth, right? But they were walking through this one particular scene was where there was the guy was had the children, where they were training the children, right, and preparing them to get ready to go back to earth and be a soul, a living soul on earth. Hence the name of the movie. And I often see myself as that job. That's why I ask, what's my job gonna be? You know what I'm saying? Is it gonna be a king? Is it gonna be to have me standing in the gap for the youth and preparing the youth and send them back? And I'll tell you why, because I'll be walking around. And I like be at a mall, and like little kids, babies, will be looking at me like, I know you. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'll be like physically staring, like there's no barriers, there's no racism, there's no ethnic gender, they don't see gender, they don't see any of that. They just see the soul of you, right? And so it just makes me think about, is that my job? Would that be my job? So that's what I would ask them.
Yeah, that's a great question. What is heaven like, God? What is this place that we've seen articulated so beautifully in the Bible? Can you tell me more about it, right? I think that's great. But you also made a comment about being a king, and that sparks something within me as well. Are we all kings? Can we all be kings? Does that mean that there is a hierarchy in terms of a social order? So are we all kings?
I would say so. I would say so. We're living in the essence of our brother and the example, Jesus Christ, right? And he's a king, right? So yeah, well, yeah, absolutely, right. And I think that that leads to the hierarchy of man and woman and being a leader in your family, right? As the man, and certain responsibilities that are placed on the king, right? And how you can't give up your kingship. I see like a lot of relationships, and we'll probably get into this later on, where they get off track because you give up your kingship, what he's put you here to do, to lead by example. Your family, your wife, deal with them as the weaker vessel. All of that, right? In our interactions with people, love each other, as you know what I'm saying, love one another, right? So as a king, right? So yes, for me, absolutely.
Great. And to me, this all says connection, right? We're talking about our connection to God, right? Because we're inquisitive, we're asking questions. We're talking about our connections to the world and its hierarchies. So here's the next essential. What's your favorite way to connect with God? And I'll go first again.
Okay.
My favorite way to connect with God is through praise and worship. And that's really make or break for me. When there's some great worship on at church, I can just lift my hands. I can just give it all to God. And it's really an emotional time for me because we are putting our trust in God. We are. So that's one of those things that does it for me. What is it for you? What's your favorite way to connect with God?
For me,
is it nature? Is it how do you get it going?
For me, it's gonna be journaling, right? It's where I can, you know what I'm saying, have my thoughts and just talk to God. A different form of prayer, if you would, right? Because I'm really pouring out my heart, and it's between me and God as I'm journaling and writing down the things that happen in my day and asking those questions. Why? What lesson am I supposed to be learning from this, right? How is this person able to present themselves and offend me like that, right? What should I do? How do I respond, right? And all of those things is through that journaling, right? And we have those conversations, and what happens is he will answer those words that I write down. Those things will come to manifest. I will see them in the next day. A manager will get moved or fired, or something will happen to them and they get moved, and I'll be like, wow, look at God. I was stressing, talking about how am I going to deal with this person? How are you going to help me, Father God, deal with this person? And we can't be messing with God's service, man. Can't be messing with his people. So I see that stuff play out like, wow, he answered those questions that you put down. So for me, it's through that journaling.
Absolutely. And I think that, and I actually believe this, that God moves every day. God makes a move in your life every single day. And I think it goes back to, ask and you shall receive. Mm-hmm. I think it's really like that. I know the love is there, and it's about being ambitious. Now that we've gotten to know our guest a little bit better, let's dive into something that shapes all of us. Whether we realize it or not, the power of words. Think about it. Words can build and words can break. They can inspire action or they can hold us back. So let's explore this. How have words shaped our journeys, our faith, and our understanding of purpose? And more importantly, how do we make sure our words align with what we truly believe? Let's dive into it. The power of words. How have words, whether encouragement or criticism, shaped your faith journey?
How have words shaped my life?
How have words, whether encouragement or criticism, shaped your faith journey?
Okay. All right. Well, I don't put a lot of faith in the world. So, there's been, the words, the criticism, the racism and all the isms that exist, right? That as a black male, I've experienced, right? In my corporate journey, being so up and down and cyclical, and it could be very discouraging if you look on it with the human eye, right? But I look on it with my Christian spirit, right? And so I use those words. I pick out words that will encourage me, right? I'll hear certain songs that will encourage me. I'll hear those words in the songs that encourage me, as if God was speaking to me, right? I'll hear some words in the movie as if God was speaking to me, right? And talking to me and changing my mode. I try not to digest the negative words. I use them. They empower me, right? But I try not to digest them so that it affects me, right, to where I carry it around. Words are very powerful, right? That old adage of sticks and stones, is a kid saying, because words are very powerful, and they do carry a lot of power. And that's why I try to make sure I'm in tune with the words that I'm saying and the words that are coming out of my mouth as well, too.
I think that comment you made about words being activated through film or through music, I think that's so powerful. And I think that throws it back to that conversation we had about God consciousness, right? And I think what that means is basically everything in your mind is put through the filter of God's word, right? That's the God consciousness. Yeah, that's the God consciousness. Yeah. So everything you see isn't religified, right? But it is spiritualized. So there's a message, there's a lesson everywhere you look and at everything you see. And for me, words have encouraged me over time, because the words used to describe faith, the words used to describe Christianity have always been positive and uplifting. And that's not the case for everyone. Mm-hmm. But if the whole world, or anyone who wanted to be involved with faith and spirituality, if the narrative was positive, right? And I'm not talking about lying, I'm talking about spreading truth, right? If the truth was known and that narrative is talked about in a positive way, that's going to change lives.
Sure.
And I think that's true in many, many ways, right? You watch the news, you watch world events, they spin narratives. And when we're talking positively about a situation versus negatively, right, that throws it back to what we were saying about a shift in perspective. It's all about perspective. And when your perspective is speaking life, and what I mean by that is not sugarcoating things, but constructively criticizing or constructively speaking about different parts of the world or parts of your life, I think that's when words really have the power to change things.
Sure, absolutely.
So how do we align our words with faith? I think there's more to unpack here. And I think that because of the emotional connection, right? We have a connection. Words are the building blocks of our consciousness, right? So simply hearing a derogatory or a negative word is going to affect you emotionally. That's the reason why people get chewed out. That's the reason why, people yell, people speak softly, quietly, whatever it may be. So I think that that's super big and super powerful, right? And I think that this throws it back to the creation story, because God spoke the world into existence, right? So words have immense creative power, but they also have an emotional connection to our spirit and our soul.
Words are interesting because they are could be a first line of defense. They could be a weapon. People could weaponize their words, right? Use them against you. And I think that you have to understand how they're being used, whether positively or negatively, right? And then the author of those words, right? Do they have credibility in my life? Do they matter? Just because you my manager don't mean you don't go home with me. I'm not married to you, right? So I don't even have to see you after these 8 hours or whatever the day is, right? So it's not even that hard to really understand that and understand the author of those words, right? And to where you look to digest those words and bring them into your life, right? You're supposed to guard your temple, right? Things you take in through your eyes, through your ears, as well as things that come out of your mouth as well too. So you have to be conscious of that as a Christian, right? Like I need to be guarded. I need to be guarded. Some of the stuff, everything, I'm not gonna take in everything, I'm not gonna watch. Some people don't watch horror movies because they don't really want to get into that side of the whole world or the realm, right? So just have to be aware of that.
Yeah, words have an immense connection to our soul and our being, and we honestly have to be gatekeepers of our tongue.
Death and life and the power of the tongue.
Right, exactly. That's it exactly. So it's about processing your words before you even speak them. And I think in this autonomous world where a lot of us are, on autopilot or not really fully thinking through, I think that I think even in the caricature of Jesus, there is a wisdom there, right? That before I speak, I'm going to pause for 2 or 3 seconds and then speak. So I think it ties into wisdom there. So I think managing your words, being a great communicator is a part of your calling, right? The wise man trains his tongue. So if you look at some of the most well-known people, it's their words that we take into account, right? That's what it is. Whether you're being criticized or encouraged, we're talking about the words you have said, right? We've got this day and age of Instagram and Twitter. We're all looking at words. What's your message? What's your brand? What are you saying? And that's how we're going to judge you.
You're going to be judged by it. He said you're going to be called into account and have to give judgment for these words that you're putting out there. And so you're absolutely right. I think it's part of your Christian walk. It's part of your Christian faith, right? To really master that, right? To really be intentional about that, right? To be disciplined about that, right? Because they can affect people, right? And you don't want to be on the other end where some words that you have said has led one of Jesus' kids away or astray. You know what I'm saying? Because you'll have to come into account for that as well too. So we do really have to. I mean, it's really like a piece of what your brand is, right? Are you going to be a positive person or a negative person? Are you speaking positively or are you speaking negatively, right? And you know what they call it now, emotional intelligence, right? Are you going to be emotionally intelligent and not let your emotions take over your words, right? And that's something that we just have to really practice at. You have to be intentional, like I said, about it, and really want your words to match up with your brand and who you are, right? You see a pastor out here cursing in the streets, right? You're like, whoa, wait, of course he could talk like this. He's an adult, you know what I'm saying, on the earth. You're a human being, right? You're supposed to be able to talk like that. But does that match your faith? Does that match your faith walk? Does that match your brand, right? So you have to really, really understand the words, the power of those words, right? Because they'll come back at you too. They'll come back at you. What you put out there will come back. So you have to be aware of that as well too. So that energy.
Absolutely. And I think back to a time I was up at a mall, right? And this is after I'd been playing college ball for a little bit and I injured my leg pretty bad. And I was up at the mall, I was like, I'm not playing no more. I'm not playing anymore, man. And I was telling that to my dad. And since then, I really haven't been back on the court. So it's just like there's a few other instances I can think back to in my life where I said certain things, even from a very young age. And something along those lines has come to pass. So there's power in words, and what you speak is how you will be held accountable.
It's all a part of. It's like a hierarchy. You know what I'm saying? It's all a part of the faith as well too, because, like you said, God spoke the world into existence, right? And so there's power in that manifestation. There's power in those words, right? As you learn that, and you learn to align your faith with your words, with your actions, it becomes your life. So, yeah.
And everything we can visibly see, there's a word for it. But my question is why? Why is there a word for everything? And in a place where we exist before there were words, like you were saying, we're an infant. All we can see is a soul through our visual, ocular senses. So a child doesn't have meaning until... A child doesn't understand meaning until they have been educated, until they have been given the power of words. So I think there's more there to unpack.
Sure. But like you said, it becomes a whole part of your makeup. Like you said, with a child, they may not be able to talk, but they still have personality. They still can relate to you. They still can demonstrate to you who they are. So as they learn that, they're learning to match that up with the words, right? And then they start to speak, and then there you go.
Right. Words have power, but at the end of the day, what we say has to align with what we do. We can speak life, we can declare faith and affirm our beliefs, but if there's no action behind those words, do they really hold weight? That's where faith and works come in, right? It's one of the biggest tensions we wrestle with. How do we balance trusting God with actually putting in effort? Are we supposed to just believe, or is there something required of us? Let's break it down.
Okay.
What does it really mean to live out our faith through action, and can faith even exist without works? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I would say, it's the answer, faith and works, putting the two together is the answer to what's my purpose, right? You want to understand what's your purpose, and it may be because it's not aligning right now. But once you put the faith and the things that God's put on your heart and that you're carrying out with the action, you start to live that out. And that becomes your purpose, right? Like, for example, how I got to where I am today working with you was when I was in high school, about 15, 16, right? And my first job was working with the city of St. Louis. My auntie worked at the Slate down there. And my job was to go around to schools in the city, right in the neighborhood, and check the milk temperatures for the summer programs, right? To make sure they had the right temperatures, their milk wasn't spoiled, kids wasn't gonna be dying on us, right? And so when I walk into the schools, the kids would be like, "Hey, how'd you get this job? You don't look too much older than us." You know what I'm saying? Like, that's something I could do, right? And so it became my life's work, that representation, the passion to be able to change and help the community from my actions, right? Aligning with my faith, because I declared it, right? Like, well, I want to do this. But he was already calling me to do it, right? He was already calling me to do it. And it became my life's work. It started off as passion work, as they call it, right? But then it turned into, I asked him, I want this to be my job. I don't want to do my passion work. I don't want to corporate America. They cool, but I got something else to do, right? And so my ministry became my life's work. So that's the faith matching up with your actions that gives you your purpose in life, right? So that's what I believe.
And some of the first things that come to mind when I hear faith and works are faith-filled words, right? There's a balance between speaking faith-filled words and taking action. And when I hear faith-filled, that sounds like prayer to me. A faith-filled word, that sounds like a prayer. That sounds like reaching out to God. But it's pretty simple, right? This is not just biblical wisdom. This is just straight up wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. If you do not take any action, don't expect results. So I think that's just ubiquitous. That's just, right. Hey, we got taught that in the third grade. If you don't do your homework, you're not going to get credit for it.
Right.
So I think that's pretty simple.
Right. Well, it's interesting too, as you grow and you mature, you understand that. And I wonder if there's a kind of hierarchy, if you would, to where you have to learn what faith is in order to put the action behind it, right? Like, going to church as a youngster, as a kid, you don't really, you just going. Your parents take you, okay, we gotta go. We're going to church. Put on my church clothes, my church shoes, all my pants, my shirt and everything, and I'm going to church, right? And, you don't really understand that communion, that corporate gathering of community and like-minded individuals is building your faith, right? Underneath, I get to see examples of what it looks like. My pastor or my teacher, my Sunday school teacher, or you know what I'm saying, my uncle, right? Being that example for me, like, oh, and I'm living with them or around them, and I see the struggles that they're having and how they're praying and how they're putting their faith in God, right, to deliver certain things for them and help them in certain situations. And so you're learning what faith is, right? Oh, okay, I get it. I got to have an understanding of the relationship with God. Okay, I'm working on that. As you learn that, now you can find things that tie to that relationship, that tie to your wanting to build that and understand what faith was, that turns into actions, right? So as you learn your values, right, as you get your compass, I like to call values your compass, right? Loyalty, respect, love, family, right? You get those things, and now I can put my faith into action around those values, right? So that it becomes a thing, a real thing for me that's living and breathing now. It matters to me. That's what values are, things that matter to you, right? And so that's where the action comes in. Or else you just be randomly, I don't know how to put action to my faith. Why do you do that? I don't know how to do that, right? So it's funny that it's kind of like a hierarchical thing where you have to learn that first in order to do that, right? So faith in action.
Yeah. And that's interesting you bring up that piece about the compass, because regardless of where you are in life, if you have that compass, you know whether you should be there or not. If I can use this compass, which is my values, if I can uphold my values in this situation, in this place, in this environment, then I know I should be there.
There you go.
And I think that's big.
There you go.
So faith can be likened to confidence in God and his promises. Works are the actions and evidence of faith. And the tension is, how do they coexist? Right? How do these things coexist? And can faith exist without works? So I'm thinking that, in a way, mankind was created to work. We were created, but beyond that, for purpose, right? And in your purpose, you're going to be working. What purpose is there that does not require action? We're created for purpose, right?
Sure.
So that's what comes to mind for me when we talk about faith and works. So as we think about finding purpose in life, it naturally leads to a bigger question. How do faith and works intersect in that process, right? We all need to find work. We all need real purpose. So talk about, right, wayfinding in life, right? This is good. And illuminate your journey as a young person and how the process of wayfinding and figuring things out went for you.
Yeah. So, many are the plans in a man's heart, right? But if they don't align with God and his plan for you, then you're going to find yourself in an empty space, right? In an empty space trying to do things that don't really bring value, that don't really bring excitement, that don't really bring the joy to your life, right? And so that intersection is that understanding that it's not me. I'm doing this for a bigger purpose, right? To carry out the help with the kingdom. My purpose is to be helpful in the kingdom of God. This is where we are, right? And how can I do that? Well, some people are basketball players, some people are football players, some people are singers, some people are actors, some people are carpenters, some people are cement layers, right? Authors, then the list goes on and on and on, right? But finding that purpose is where it intersects when it aligns with the will of God for your life, right? To really understand that. How do you know that then? What's the will of God? Well, you got to have those conversations. You got to talk about it. You got to write it down. You got to try to figure it out, right? So figure it out with who? Your mom? No. With your wife? No. With God. You got to talk to God. And so that's how that intersection comes in. You got to go to the altar. What we doing here, man? How we doing it? Help me out. You know what I'm saying? Give me some direction. I need to know where to go. How we do it? So that's how I feel.
And I feel like that ties in beautifully with the journey, right? And wayfinding. We're all on a journey in life, and if you're not taking any action, if you're idle, if you're stagnant, that's not a journey. Right. That is a life passing you by. Those are things passing you by, which in a way, just sitting there, although you may be inactive, things happen. But if you don't move, something or someone will move you. Yeah. Right? Life is going to move you along, whether you like it or not.
Things either happen to you, or you can make things happen for you.
Yeah.
It's simple. You know what I'm saying? Put it into action. Right?
And since we were talking about movies and the film a little bit, I recently saw the movie Mufasa.
Okay.
Back around December. And it was a great story because it was all about a journey. It was about storytelling and it was about a journey. And eventually Mufasa finds his way to the Pride Land. But along the way, he had to rely on what he was taught. He had to rely on his difference, right? He was a little bit different. He was not raised in a way that was common for the male lions, right? But he also gained skills that were unique to him and only him. So the journey, in my mind, is the destination, right? Oftentimes we hear that phrase, that cultural colloquialism that the journey is the destination. And I think there's a lot of truth there because there's a beginning and an end. And in between that beginning and end, you're in motion, you're moving. So the journey is where you learn. The journey is where you gain so many experiences. And I truly think it's the destination because the middle of the story is where the motion happens. At the beginning and the end, you're idle, right? We're all on a journey and we're all wayfinding.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The narrative that, you know, no one could tell you about your life because they haven't lived your life, right? So it's great to kind of gain that insight, try to figure out that journey, reading books, reading the Bible, talking to people, having mentors and things of that nature, I think are very helpful in understanding the journey. But the thing is, and you got to experience it. But the key is you have to be okay with failing. And so that's not a culture of the world. That's not what the world tells you to do. You're a loser. Oh, you're a loser, L7 square, right? Because you failed or you want to go down a different path, right? For your journey. You're not trying to follow the status quo and what everybody else is doing, right? But in that, again, you're going to fail. And I think that is a shift that we have to make, and I'm working to make that shift with our youth to really understand that, right? Like, it's okay. Fail forward, fail fast, learn from it. And if you truly learn from it, is it a failure, right? Even if you end up repeating the same thing, and us as Christians, I'm talking to myself about myself now, about how I would learn something and do the same thing, right? And repeat the action, right? And so, did you really learn? Yeah, absolutely, I learned, right? Because I'm asking for forgiveness. I'm trying to be better, right? And God knows my heart. So, on that journey, right, that's where you learn things. But the faster you learn it, the faster you can move on to the next level, right? Just like in school. The faster you learn, the faster you can move on to the next level. So, we're all trying to get to the next level, should be, right? That's what you was just talking about. If you standing still, then something's going to happen to you, but it's happening to you and not for you. So you got to really be on your journey to try to get to the destination, right? Because it is the destination. I'm learning that right now. We're learning that right now. Every day, if you're moving it forward, every day, that's the destination, right? Like you said, I'm learning something every day. There you go.
And this is the exciting part. Like, on the journey, that's when you fight the war. That's when you fight the battle. That's when you learn. That's when you gain friends and relationships. At the end of the battle, there's nothing to do. Mm-hmm. It's already won. So the journey is really just the context for your success. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to say. And if you're interviewing somebody and they don't have much to say, it's probably because they're really young and they don't have much context because they haven't gone. They're at the beginning of their journey, and so there's really not much to touch on.
Yeah. It's so true to that. I want to double click on it again too, because what's in my spirit is just how, as we were young, right, and learning about relationships, you thought that girl was the one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And she turned out to not be, right? The relationship failed. But what did I learn from that, right? I learned what I don't like. I learned what I don't want. I learned how to be aware of certain things and certain instances that could be triggers for something else, so I could address it, right? And so, and you think about that in relationships, and why would it be any different with God, right? So everything's not going to work out exactly the way you want it to. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have pitfalls and setbacks and things of that nature as well, too. But isn't that something that you could come to and talk to them about and really, really learn about it? That, man, that makes that journey just so much better. It makes it just so much better.
And when we talk about lessons and failure, one thing that comes to mind is ambition. If you're truly ambitious, it's never losses, it's a lesson.
Right.
And that's what I've heard, and that's what I find to be true. Because when you fail, it's a setback, but if you learn from that failure and you say, hey, I can't afford to make that mistake again, let me go ahead and change some things.
Mm-hmm.
So finding purpose is a journey, one that comes with questions, challenges, and even contradictions. And sometimes the things we've always believed don't quite add up to the way we thought they would. That's where we are in today's Glitch in the Matrix. A Glitch in the Matrix. This segment is all about wrestling with the uncomfortable, the unconventional, and the unpopular. It's a space where we introduce a thought-provoking, maybe even controversial perspective. Something that challenges conventional wisdom, faith traditions, or cultural assumptions. The goal isn't just to stir the pot, but to invite honest dialogue, deeper understanding, and more nuance to complex issues. So today's Glitch in the Matrix. If God's blessing isn't based on our performance, and simply because God is good, then why should we put effort into pursuing biblical principles and lifestyle? Or in other words, if God's love isn't conditional, does obedience still matter?
God's love isn't conditional. Does obedience still matter? Obedience, to me, and a lot of people have problems with that word, right? Being obedient, being a servant, right? To me, what it translates into is discipline, right? And in that sense, yes, it would matter because you want to be able to have control over your flesh. You want to be able to be in a spirit, you know what I'm saying? In the spirit, if you would. So, you have to do that, right? It's not conditional, but you still have to learn those lessons. You still have to be obedient in order to gain that discipline, right? To have that power over the flesh. The flesh is something serious. It's something serious. We all wrapped in it too. That he did that on purpose, right? And wrapped it in the spirit. And so, but which one wins? Which one wins, the flesh or the spirit, right? And so, how do you know? That obedience, that discipline, that's how you do it. That's that. And who am I going to be obedient to? Who am I going to be a servant to? My flesh or my spirit, right? And so, I used to do exercises like, I'll go and go shopping. I'm a shopper, a shopping therapy. I like shopping therapy, right? So, I'll go pick out some stuff, right? A whole bunch of stuff, and then not get it. You know what I'm saying? To put that flesh down. Although I could. I got the money, I got the bread, I used to buy it. Or, I'm working and everything. So, I could definitely do it. But which one is more powerful? That obedience. Can I have obedience to be able to tell the flesh, no, we're not doing that. So, yeah, it matters. It does matter.
And putting effort into pursuing biblical principles and lifestyle goes beyond the Bible, right? We're talking about kindness. We're talking about respect. We're talking about generosity. These are things that even outside of biblical wisdom are applied in other faiths, spiritualities, and globally, right? It's not just about, right? I feel like in a lot of ways, God is a God who, I know this, God is a God who is wise, and God is a God who is here for abundance and abundant life. Mm-hmm. Therefore, his wisdom and principles are not only better, they're right in a lot of ways. So these biblical principles won't only help you become a better Christian, but they'll also help you become a better person and be more successful in life in general.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you think about it, right? Like, what does what would really help in this world right now, right? In the current state that we're in, and administrations and isms that exist, right? And that's to come together as community, to know that we have a lot more in common than we do differently. Like my father once said that, he was going through a very difficult racist incident in St. Louis, where his manager was pressing him to do certain things. And, maybe it's just kind of my generational curse as well, too, because I've had that same experience. But he told the gentleman, right? He said, write down everything you want for your life and your family and sign my name at the bottom, because I want that too. And it's just, if you think about it, it's just such a biblical principle, lifestyle, to where do unto others if you have them do unto you. Love thy neighbor, right? Turn the other cheek. Like, all of that matters, right? So that doesn't exist in the world. And this would be a totally different place. It would be a totally different place where you have 1% of people that could, wipe out, homelessness and different poverties and different diseases in certain countries, right? Like, what? But you're just sitting on the bread. Wow. Imagine that.
Right. If grace is given freely, what motivates us to live holy, right? How do we address the misconception that grace gives us a free pass to live however we want? And for me, this just comes back to trusting in God and taking God at his word, right? God is the ultimate authority, the final authority, and I think that we are covered in our Savior, Jesus Christ, and so although sin has a effect in this material world, it may not have an effect on heaven because of what Jesus did through his sacrifice. So I think just being motivated to live holy, I think that there is ancient practices and principles here on earth, and adhering to those principles is going to create less turbulence for you. Mm-hmm. I think there's legitimate spiritual force and history here on earth, and listening to, seeking out righteousness, seeking out wisdom on how to navigate life is necessary to not just be holy, but to be a more effective person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I mean, grace is not a free pass to go out there and just do Harry Carey and, you know what I'm saying, be evil and mean to people and intentionally try to hurt people and harm people, right? Like, no, that's not what grace is. It's the guardrails at the bowling alley to make sure you don't throw a gutter. You know what I'm saying? And lose out and be disappointed on yourself and in your life, right? You get another shot. You get to see it kind of work and how it's supposed to work, to where you can learn that now I'm going to come back. I'm not going to throw it right over there. I'm going to try to throw it straight down the center. You know what I mean? And make sure I can hit all the pins and not just one or two. So it's kind of that second start, that fresh start, if you would, man. Then that's a concept that we need to pass on more and more to our black males, black men in the community, because we don't often get that. You don't often get that fresh start. If you make a mistake, right, like you're condemned. Like in corporate America, and I was going through the process, right, like it was such a, because we're automatically looked at as we don't have what it takes to be there anyway. That's why the whole adage is you have to work 110%, 120% harder. We're doing extra work. We're staying up late at night. We're working on the weekends and things of that nature in order to show that value, right? But it's not necessarily the truth or the end all be all, right? So understand that and learning that is really how it can motivate you to just live in a different way. You know what I'm saying? Not just that, not be that person.
But does effort and faith mean that we're trying to earn something from God? Or is it a response to his love?
Oh, definitely a response to love, because you can't earn it. How are you going to earn it? You can't pay, just because you paying a lot, they're going to let you sit down front at the church because you one of the biggest tithers at the church and at these mega churches. No, that's not how it works. It's not how it works. So you can't earn it. You can't earn it. In the sense of trying to buy it, in the sense of trying to do things extra good, it's got to be, what's the purpose, right? It's got to be, because God first loved me. That's why I do it, for sure. Because he first loved me, so to give it back is just really where I'm really trying to be. I may not get it right, but that's where I'm trying to be. That's the lifestyle I'm trying to live. That's the direction I'm trying to go on. That's the path I'm on right now, is to try to live it right because he loved me. That's it. I mean, if you think about it, and especially in relationships, I talk about it all the time with my wife. My wife says this as well too. It's not the marriage is not a paper agreement between you and the other person. It's an agreement that you have with God. It's a trust that you have in God that he sent this person to you, and that's your person. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to train you how to love each other and how to be their yin and you can be their yang. You know what I'm saying? To really make it work. It's not about the other person or how they can help you. It's really the love of God. I love him so much that he did this for me, and I want to honor that. And that changes the game when you really put it in that perspective, right? When you're going out and doing things that you're not really supposed to do. Do you really love God at that point?
And I don't know if you've heard this before, but sometimes faith is referred to as a spiritual law, right? And a law is something that never changes. Okay. It is what it is, similar to the law of gravity, right? And adhering to faith can produce, for lack of better words, a spiritual currency. Right? So it's not that you are earning anything.
Okay.
It's just that based upon the law of faith, worshiping God, adhering to his principles, you are just naturally going to reap the benefits. It's just one of those things, because we adhere to and believe in a God that is a good God, that is a God of abundant life. Therefore, based on his laws, his rule, his doctrine, and his faith, sometimes great things are gonna happen to you as part of being in the spiritual family.
Oh, I like where you're going with that. Just that whole, when you started talking about it, I thought about, just being a muscle in the body, right? You have to continue to work on that and work that out in order for that muscle to build and get stronger, right? And so that faith can directly be tied to favor, and favor is a real thing. You know what I'm saying? That parking lot, that parking spot down front. You know what I'm saying? Or that bonus that you was waiting on come through, right? Like that favor is a real thing, and I was taught, or I believe that it's based on, if you are trying to build up your faith, if you're trying to walk the biblical principles out and have that lifestyle, right? Then what happens is that you end up in more spaces and circles where God can bless you. You're not out of alignment to where you have to get back into alignment. You got to pray about this. You got to release this. You got to ask for forgiveness of this to get back in alignment. And the more that you can stay aligned, the more blessings that come that way. Well, then, does that mean that it's going to be just, you know what I'm saying, birds and chirping and love all around all the time? No, because we're in this world, right? And so that's but you will definitely miss some pitfalls and some traps and snares that are being laid for you the more you stay on that path, right? Building up that faith and getting into that favor. Staying in that circle where he can bless you. That's a real thing.
Yeah, and you hit it on the head right there. That's the word I was looking for, right? Being part of God's family, being under the blessing is going to provide favor for your life. And another thing you said, which is sort of our unexpected discovery for today, you mentioned alignment. And a prayer that you can pray is, Father God, I pray that you align my spirit, soul, body, and relationships. Wrestling with tough questions can shift our perspective, but one thing that always shapes our journey is the people we do life with. Relationships, whether family, friends, or mentors, can either build us up or hold us back. So how do we navigate them? With wisdom. Let's break it down. Relationship management. How do we engage with the people closest to us and their role in our lives? Any thoughts on this? What comes to mind?
Oh, man. We oftentimes do the people around us and in our lives so dirty. And it's just because they're around, right? But they're going through it with you. So it's really funny just how we do each other sometimes, right? And family don't be talking to people over something very silly, right? But it's really where we should be trying to build the biggest community. And it's different in relationships, right? As you are trying to be with a person and trying to become one. You don't know everything about each other, so you have to take time to learn about each other. You have to learn about, the things that you don't like or dislike about a person, because that happens too. There's things about that you don't like about your wife, and she don't like about you, that you have to work through that in order to be able to have and be in a good relationship. And so if you understand it, you have to give it to God so that he can help you fix it, right? So, but that, if you don't, it'll manifest like everything else in your body. As a sore, as a disease, as a, pain in your life. And so we just have to be able to understand that you are not really fixing anything, right? You have to understand what it is needs to be fixed in a relationship and give it to God so that he can fix it. Any marriage that is working has God in it. Any relationship that's working has God in it. And so that could be your family as well too. A lot of times that be the problem where there's no God nowhere in there. Ain't nobody going to church, ain't nobody talking to God. And so you mad at somebody because they took the last piece of sweet potato pie at the Christmas party, right? So it's like, what, right? Like, you have to put God in it for real.
And when we talk about relationship management, we're also talking about alignment, which I previously managed. But also, when I say relationship management, I think another word we could use here is relationship optimization. We're not coming at this from a place of manipulation. We're coming at it from a place of optimization.
Okay.
Right? We want things to work the best they can. And honestly, we've been talking about this whole time. One of the key relationships you're going to have to try to optimize is your relationship with God. And that's all we've been talking about, right? We've been talking about how can we take the wisdom, principles, and experiences from our life to better serve and be in relationship with God. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. You nailed it. That is the first relationship that you have to value and really put into perspective and really learn and really work on so that all the other ones will work out as well too. So yeah, that's spot on.
And throwing it back to words, right? These relationships matter because of the words spoken from both parties. And I've been talking about the emotional connection. The people closest to you have a stronger emotional pull on and tug on your heart and on your mind. So even with family, we have to work to optimize how, when, and where we say what we do say. I've been in situations and scenarios where, even on a small scale, like deciding where to go to dinner or deciding what to do, and you may not get your way, right? There's no need to have any chatter that's like not speaking life into people. So I think I think there's more to unpack here, but what I'm saying is the people closest to you, their words probably hit the hardest and affect you the most.
Oh, most definitely. Because they matter. You allow them to be in your circle, in your camp, in your world. So they're gonna matter more than someone that's outside of my circle. Like I was saying earlier, I don't have to go home with my manager. So if he having a bad day and he not getting that ain't got nothing to do with me. You know what I'm saying? You extra stressed and you trying to be stressed me. Nah, ain't got nothing to do with me, brother. I'm gonna be happy and go home and just be just as happy, right? So, but my family though, I can't then now take that extra stress that they're trying to put on me and the frustration that I have, digest it. Like I was talking about earlier, you got to be careful of the stuff that you digest and what you bring into your circle, and then take that home and live that out at home. Now I'm mad at something that happened at work, and it's exercising at home, right? Oh, manifesting at home. But why ain't got no food? You know what I'm saying? I'm hungry. Why you didn't cook nothing, right? Like, no. You have to block that off.
And tying it all together, we've been talking about the journey. We've been talking about words and relationship management. On your journey, you lean on the people closest to you. Mm-hmm. Therefore, how do you find your own voice? Because in this space of beginning your journey with not as much wisdom as other people, you're going to have to reach out to those closest to you, mm-hmm. right? So even throwing it back to Mufasa, right? On that journey from where he started to the Pride Land, he had to rely on his own voice, on the teachings of his mom and his dad. But along the way, his companions, right? He had Rafiki, he had Sarabi, he had Scar. He had to consult them at times, but ultimately the decisions came down to his instincts. Mm-hmm. So how do we find our own instincts? How do we know our own voice in a time where we're leaning on others so heavily?
It's because that you still are the captain of your ship. You know what I'm saying? The master of your soul, and so you have to make sure that it works for you, right? At the end of the day, and when you have doubts and you're not really sure, you 17, 18 trying to find that voice, that's where that relationship comes in with God, so that you have someone, you do have a father. You may not be physically there or in the home. He may not be around where you could call him, but you have a father that you can call on, right? You can fall down and ask that question. You can write it down and see what he said. Father God, help me with this particular situation. I don't know which way to go. And so that's where you find your voice. You voiced that out, right? You spoke that out loud. And that's something as well, too, with just, you know, there's a process that I take you through as well, too, right? You think about it, right? You say it. You write it down, right? But in the process of saying it, you also heard it. So they went back into the mind and it's circling around in a 360 manner, right? To where it's not just in my head. It came down through my mouth. I heard it. I wrote it down. Now I can see it. You touched everything, right? And it becomes something that becomes in you. It becomes something that's solid at that point. So really learning your voice, that's how you learn your voice, right? You have to say it out loud. You have to see it. You have to hear it. You have to write it down. You have to digest it. Then you can live it at that point.
And that's so awesome and amazing that you brought that up, right? We're talking about optimization of our relationship with God. And in those moments where you have questions, that's when you activate your words. That's exactly what you're saying. You call upon God for wisdom and guidance. Mm-hmm. It's all here. It's all very cyclical, and there's a cycle here between your words, your questions, and your relationship with God.
Absolutely.
The relationships we cultivate shape who we become, but at the core of it all is identity. Who we are and what we stand for. And for men, that journey comes with its own unique challenges and expectations. So what is real manhood? What does that look like? Let's unpack it. Real manhood. And I'll go first on this.
Okay.
I have an interesting take.
All right, let me hear it.
What does it mean to be a man? What it means to be a man is simply put this way, is to possess a soul. I think what it means to be a man is to possess a soul, right? You can be any combination, any amalgamation or mixing of lived experiences. How can we put stereotypes and Hollywood narratives on a human being, right? I don't think we can define a man based upon stereotypes.
Okay. Okay. I like that. I would say that it for me it really boils down to being accountable, right? Like otherwise I could say one thing and do something else. As a real man, you got to really be able to stand on your word. Your word has to mean something. It has to, when you say it, people take that and they take it into their life. They listen to it. You want your son to listen to the words that you're telling them, right? So that they can grow up to be a man, right? And so if you have no real accountability and you're not really just holding yourself accountable for the things that you're doing that are not of being a real man, right? Then you're doing yourself a disservice. I don't know if that's really real manhood. You are still on the way. You're a man in the physical sense. You know what I'm saying? You have the parts, the body parts, right? But are you really being a man at that point, right? Can you stand on your word? Can your word stand alone? And you just have to really assess that, to really see where you are. That goes back to your brand. You know what I'm saying? What are people saying about you when you're out of the room? Not like talking about you. It's because I was in the room, and as a man, I represented when I was there. So you know what I'm thinking. You know how I feel. You know how I get down. You know you can't just, you know what I'm saying? Try to do me any old kind of way or say any old kind of thing. You gotta really be about that living. So, yeah.
But do you think that being a man is a certain set of characteristics, responsibilities, and personality traits? Or do you think it's something else?
I think it really boils down to do your words have meaning, right? As far as being respected as a man, right? You can go back to the biblical sense that Adam, you know what I'm saying? He had a set of rules that he had to follow and live up to, right? And so if you don't follow those rules and orders, you're not being the man that he built you to be, right? So going back to that root, it comes down to God. Are you being the man that God wants you to be? Not what the world wants you to be, not what you think you should be, but that God wants you to be. Well, how would you know that? Well, you got to have a relationship. You got to ask those questions. The ASK to GET.
And something that's also very popular that's being discussed is authenticity.
Yeah.
And I have another interesting take on this. I think that we're always our authentic selves. And that comment you made earlier about the compass, your values, right? You're always going to have your values, but you're always a version of who you are, whether that version is nefarious or holy in a given situation. You're still you. Mm-hmm. How can you leave being authentically you? How can you get away from that? So I think that's a very curious question and topic, but what are your thoughts on it?
Man, authentic self. I mean, you have to know who you are in order to be authentic. And a lot of times we don't take the time to really know who we are. We don't unpack those generational curses. We don't unpack those triggers and those things that happen to us, that PTSD that you're walking around with, that you're carrying, and really deal with that in order to really be authentic. You have to know yourself first. And so it takes some self-reflection. It takes some time to really get to know who I am. I'm writing down all of my relationships in my life And I've never ended a relationship. What is that saying about me? You know what I'm saying? All of my girlfriends have broken up with me. What is that saying about me? Am I there too long? Do I not see the writing on the wall? Do I not want to handle that rejection? Do I not want to bring that closure? You know what I'm saying? For myself. Now I know that by analyzing myself and looking at myself and looking at all those relationships. Now I can be authentic to myself. And in the next relationship, I know what I'm really looking for. I know what I'm not looking for. And I know when I can close it off. I can turn it off now because I know myself. Like, I know what I'm looking for. I know what I want. So it really operates around knowing yourself, knowing your truth.
And one thing that came to mind for me is kind of this metaphor or analogy to food, right? You got a piece of lettuce, right?
Okay.
And which one is authentic? Is it the one that's organic or the one that has been sprayed with pesticides? Which one is it? So I don't know in what way that relates to what we've been saying, but I know there's something there. I know there's something I'm trying to unpack and articulate, but right? Whether that lettuce is thrown into a salad or it is chopped up as a garnish, it's still lettuce. Mm-hmm. It's still authentic lettuce. So I don't know, man. I think there's more there, and I'd like to unpack that sometime in the future.
Okay. I mean, I get it. I mean, the analogy, I'm going with you, you know what I'm saying? Because if you just look at it on the surface, you can't tell. You can't tell the difference. So how would you actually know? You'd have to go back to the root of where that came from, right? Where did that lettuce come from? What happened to that lettuce? What farm was it on? Who were the farmers and what were they doing, right? As well as yourself, right? Looking at everyone else, we all walk around here, man and women, looking like men and women, but are you really being authentic to yourself? Are you really being a man? Are you really talking about real manhood right now? And so let's go back to the root. What's going on at the root? What happened at home? Was the father there? Can you analyze that and break that down so that I know, I still have, my father may not have been there. My mom divorced them. They divorced at 10, you know what I'm saying, when I was 10, right? And so, but I still have football coaches. I still had pastors. I still had uncles, you know what I'm saying? My mom had 6 brothers, right? So I still have male figures in my life. I still had a relationship with my father, you know what I'm saying, even though I didn't see him every day, right? But I can break that down. And now I don't have to use that as an excuse, right? Like, I didn't have no father in the home. What does that mean? That mean you can't be a man? No, I went back to the root. I figured that out. Okay, I still have role models and male figures. These are some of the things they taught me, the lessons that I have. This is how I got my values. I have my compass. Now, I'm back on the road. You know what I'm saying? Back on the road again.
Absolutely. Understanding who we are is one thing, but living it out in a world full of noise, pressure, and distractions is another, right? So how do we stay grounded without getting caught up in everything around us? Let's zoom out for a moment and talk about the world we're navigating, what it's saying, what it's shaping, and how we're called to respond. Or in other words, stay in your lane, bro. The world. Scripture tells us not to be caught up in the cares of the world. How do you manage being invested in your community, but not being pulled down by the negativity of the world around us?
Filtering what comes in and what goes out, man. I mean, there's a lot of negativity, but a lot of people talk about the current administration and things of that nature, right? And I'm like, is this the first time you've experienced this? No. It's not the first time we experienced it. There were other presidents, Reagan and Nixon. There's all kind of guys that came before us, right? In situations that our parents have been in and the world has been in, right? That may not necessarily want people that look like myself to be successful, right? But I could internalize that and be like, oh, that's the reason why. Or I could be like, you know what? Do you. I'm going to do me. I'm keeping an eye on you, though, and all the things that you're doing, but I'm going to still do me.
Right. I think that there is a balance between kind of being very focused on your commitment to the Lord and being guided and trusting that favor and that there's a hedge around you protecting you. But I do also think, like some of the work you've been doing, investing in your community, right? We're still out in the community, and I think a very simple way of putting it is something we've all heard: control what you can control. Mm-hmm. What you can control: are you showing up every day? Mm-hmm. The words you speak, and you can vote. We have the ability to vote. We have the ability to be acknowledged in a lot of ways. So I think that's a big part of it. So another big piece of this is actually knowing what the cares of the world are, right? Distractions, like, I think little things. I won't say that materialism is, right, you need to make money, but you shouldn't be fully committed or invested to I think it comes down to stewardship, right? You want to be a good steward of your money. You want to be a good steward of the things, right? But I guess the cares of the world are, I guess, worldly pressures, right? Things like that. So what are your thoughts on maybe some of those things that could be considered a care of the world, right? That we're not supposed to be caught up in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very delicate topic because it really, for me, it boils down to anything that's in excess, right? You could be on the phone too much, or surfing too much, or on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the social media piece is, right? That's distracting you from focusing in on the real meat and potatoes of what you should be doing, right? The direction, the plan that God's giving you, the things that you're working on that you want to see manifest in your life. You know what I'm saying? Your family and how you want them to grow, right? Like, if it's distracting from that, right, then yeah, that's a care of the world. You're spending too much time on your job, right? And in this world, it's always go, do, right? And they really demand a lot of your time. But is that really the real focus? So I guess you just have to really make sure you're keeping your focus right, to really not focusing on the cares of the world. I don't even really, I mean, I listen to news, right? I get my news, but I'm not really sitting there like watching Fox all the time like some people, right? Like, I'm just not doing that. So where you getting all your information from does matter, but it sounds like some things, cares of the world. And they're going to really promote the cares of the world, for sure. So, again, watch that temple. Watch what you're taking in. Watch what you're taking in, man.
Right. And I think that's a big part of it. And even paying attention to certain things like, I don't know, the Shade Room. Just for example, right? The Shade Room or the Drake versus Kendrick beef. Like, what our focus should be on is the knowledge and wisdom of God. And that doesn't mean you can't have fun. That doesn't mean you can't have extracurricular activities and engage with certain media and news. I think that just means that at the end of the day, that's not what you go to first. That's not your source, right? So when you focus on God and what he's called you to do, outside noise loses its power over you. And I think that kind of sums up what we've been talking about. And you also mentioned earlier, right, setting boundaries and protecting your mindset. And, what do you consume? Social media, news, other conversations. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people who sharpen and uplift you.
Absolutely. Your community, man, your circle, man, has to be really, really, really strong. Your network that you should be working on and building. You can't be the smartest person on the team, and you got to really try to build that up, right? So that you're getting good information, good feedback. You should also be looking to find mentors. I'm a real big proponent of mentors and mentorship. It's not just the nature of what I'm doing with the youth, but even for me and as an adult, right? Trying to find that space, trying to find those like-minded individuals. It just helps with keeping you on the path, right? Helping with your focus, right? Less distractions, right? And what you're taking in, like you said, when you're with like-minded individuals, right? Like, how is a married man hanging out with a bunch of single men? Like, how is that going to work for the people that you hang around and the focus that you're trying to go on, right? The things that you're doing, that you're listening to and y'all talking about are going to be two totally different things. So I should naturally try to hang around some other brothers who are married, right? That we can help and live and learn from each other as well, too, and glean from each other so that iron can sharpen iron.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's huge. And this next kind of comment I have on this, I think is really the cornerstone of this segment about the world, right? We want to live with intention, right? We want to impact the world without letting it define us. And I think Jesus' example is big on this, right? Jesus engaged with people, but he never lost his mission, right? And we're called to do the same, right? Serve, advocate, build relationships, but don't let external pressures dictate our faith or our identity. We've covered a lot here: faith, purpose, identity, and navigating the world around us. But before we wrap up, let's take a moment to highlight a key takeaway. Something worth repeating, something that sticks. It's time for Say That Again. Say that again, words that stick. It's time for our final thoughts and reflections. In this segment, we take a quote, scripture, or powerful statement, either from our special guest, a cultural figure, or a biblical passage, and break it down. We explore why it matters, how it applies to real life, and how words shape perspective and action. So I've got something here that we could use, but is there anything from our conversation that you would like to run it back real quick and discuss?
There were a couple of things. I mean, my favorite verse, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the word, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, give you a hope in the future, right? And I really believe if we can align on that, a lot of those cares of the world will go away, right? They'll be, or at least be set at bay. You know what I'm saying? Where I'm not leaning on my own understanding, trying to figure things out all the time. But what you got?
Yeah, I think you brought up a great one. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it comes back to the emotional ties and also relationship optimization, right? The words and narrative we've been taught about this world are oftentimes turbulent, oftentimes filled with anxiety. But our connection to Jesus and that scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, we should have such confidence and faith in God that even though we may be shaken at times by anxiety, worry, and doubt, we know that with intention, right, with faith and works put together, we're going to be all right. We're going to be good. So I think that sums it up.
Hope in the future.
And lastly, what does it look like to put faith into practice every day? We've been talking about this, but let's give listeners out there one or two things they can do, and I can go first.
Okay.
And we've talked about this. Number one, using your words through prayer, right? Prayer is the beginning of your relationship with God, praying. And number two, you mentioned this. Another way to use our words is to journal, right? Talk to yourself. Hear what your spirit is saying, what your consciousness wants to articulate. Write it down, reference it, and go from there.
Putting faith into practice every day. Something very practical is just moving your life forward positively, one step at a time every day. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily make you a Jesus holy roller or anything of that nature. But if you're being positive, and most of the time when you focus on your life, you want it to be positive. You want the outcome to be positive. It's going to put you on a plane towards living that life, living that faith, putting that faith into action, and living it out every day. A little bit, just one step. I did something positive for my life today, and I went and opened up that bank account. I went and opened up that savings account. I got that, whatever it is, moving it forward a little bit every day.
Man, this conversation has been real. So many gems, so many perspectives. But at the end of the day, it's not just about what we hear. It's about what we do with it. Let's take these insights and put them into action. That's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend and make sure to be on alert as more episodes are coming soon. Thanks for listening. And remember, don't just talk about it. Be about it. Peace out, y'all.